Blog Talk Radio.
We are the UR Tennis Network. Our mission is to be the voice of tennis. We enlist a team of passionate enthusiasts to promote our sport. We strive to bring interesting perspectives on the many spins of tennis. Our goal is to provide the learners of our sport with current news and information from many angles. We seek active participation from communities interested in tennis, but tennis is not interested in them. We are expanding our outreach. Tennis is a true lifetime sport that needs to be talked about, and the UR Tennis Network pledges to pursue this idea relentlessly.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Parenting Aces radio show on Blog Talk Radio's UR Tennis Network. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and we have another great show for you today. About a month ago, I posted an article on Facebook called The Race to Nowhere in Youth Sports by Changing the Game Project. And y'all know I had Coach John O'Sullivan from Changing the Game Project on this show a couple weeks ago. So those of you who tune in regularly are pretty familiar with his work in changing the face of youth sports. But anyway, why I'm mentioning that is I posted the article and it generated several comments, and this was on my personal Facebook page. And one of the comments came from my son's first real tennis coach. Not his first teacher, because he did have a teacher as a younger player, but his first real coach. And his coach wrote, "When I first started teaching tennis, I was one of those coaches selling pipe dreams to these parents. It is a shame because sports should be the best part of the kid's day with the demands of school on a daily basis." And I'm reading that quote to you because it just totally hit a nerve for me and made me realize that we needed to get this guy on the show to talk about what led him down his path to recognizing what he needed to change about his coaching methods. So I quickly got in touch with Noel Wadawu, who is a coach here in Atlanta, and asked him if he would join us on the air, and he was more than happy to do that. So I'm really, really excited that we have him here to share with us what his journey as a coach has looked like. And let me just tell you, Noel is from Zimbabwe originally. He grew up playing tennis there and was a national champion in Zimbabwe. Came to our country to play tennis at Florida A&M University, and had a great tennis career there as a college student, and then went on to become a coach. And he trained under Brian DeVilliers and Grant Stafford here in Atlanta, and then took over as head coach at the Riverside Club, forming his own tennis academy for juniors, and he also coaches adults as well at the Riverside Club here. And he's a fantastic coach. He was my son's coach for several years and really got us started down this path to competitive junior tennis. So Noel knows a lot. He's had a lot of experience. He's still a young coach, but has wisdom beyond his years. So please welcome on the air with us today, Noel Wadawu. And Noel, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show and for your honesty.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I was looking forward actually to coming on your show today. So hopefully I can share some of my knowledge and help some people out.
Well, I think, you can't help but do that. And you and I were talking before we went on the air, and we were both saying that, every time you turn on the TV or open a newspaper or go online to read about tennis, all we are hearing these days is what's wrong with American tennis, what's wrong with American tennis. And it's getting old because there's really not that much wrong with American tennis. I mean, there are some things that we could definitely do better, but I do think we're, heading down a path that's going to lead to future champions, and I know you feel the same way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Lisa. I'm all about that statement. I'm actually sick and tired of it on TV. The reason why is, I think when I listen to you on TV, you hear the experts say, well, the biggest statement is the American kids are not tough enough like the Europeans. I mean, that really touches a nerve for me because, you're not going to hear Europeans say, well, Europeans are not like the Americans. Let's teach the Europeans the American way. So I think that's the first mistake that we're making in general is trying to teach our American kids about a culture that they don't know. Why don't we teach our American kids based on the American culture that they're growing up and the values that their parents are bringing them up? I think from that perspective, then we'll be able to produce the champions, teach them the American way, rather than us trying to develop somebody else's philosophy, because for sure I know the Europeans are not trying to say, well, let's find out what's going on in America and then, let's teach them that way.
That makes so much sense.
That's the first mistake that we're trying to make, and me being a foreigner, that was one of the things that I did. I came here, look, there's a land of opportunity. It teaches you if you work hard, you will succeed. So, dealing with these kids, when I was a younger coach, I started my coaching career very young. I was 19 years old, and I was throwing in the fire. So, with that, I'm like, okay, well, what are my values and beliefs growing up in Zimbabwe? Okay, the discipline is a lot different from there, but that's the culture. I never looked at it in terms of, okay, how can I, bring my values to how it works to these kids that I'm teaching. The kids that I'm teaching in tennis, you're dealing with affluent kids that have totally different problems to what I have. I need to figure out what makes them tick. I need to figure out what's going on in their world, because I'm the one who needs to adjust to what's going on in their world to bring the best out of them. I don't think it's the other way where they need to adjust to what we're bringing to the table, because, we don't play at the end of the day. They're the ones that are playing. So us as the coaches have to do a better job of trying to understand, the product that we're dealing with. And I think that's where the issue is.
So what makes a good coach?
That's a good question. My opinion, first and foremost, the person has to care. I say, you're a parent, you're bringing your kid to take a lesson from a coach. The first thing you should, look at is just look at how your kid is interacting with that coach. A good coach obviously makes players want to play for them. I think it's a big criteria. And that person usually cares about the well-being of the player, not just the wins and losses. That coach cares about every single facet of the kid, how they're doing in school, who their friends are, what their interests are, that's what I think makes a good coach. I see a lot of times, I see a lot of times the kids, acting like the coach. I think that's a serious problem.
That's interesting. And so, as parents that are looking for coaches, and let me point out again, you're in the Atlanta community just like I am. There are coaches on every corner basically for these kids. And so, how does a parent discern which coach knows his or her stuff and has the ability to connect with the child, like you're saying, and impart their knowledge and wisdom to that child and foster that love of tennis for them?
Well, first I think that you start with your kid, the child that you're dealing with. When they get home, are they talking about this coach? That's the first thing. If you're sending your kid to a program and they never talk about my coach saying such and such, or asking questions, then to me that raises a flag in itself. Like, what real impact is it? Am my kid getting a benefit, or are they just going for the hits? And that's because a good coach has to be able to bring the best out of a kid, and I don't think you can bring the best out of a kid if you don't know anything about that kid and you don't try to know anything about that child.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think to answer your question, it starts with the kid. The kid has to, click with the coach. And I said, look, my one as a parent now, this is one of the stance that I changed. What I would say, look, as a parent now, this is just my opinion. I would have a tough time right now with my girls. I have 2 young girls, and they're going to probably participate in tennis. I'm going to have a tough time in the beginning getting them to have a coach that does not have any kids for this particular reason, because these kids deal with so much stuff that if you're not a parent on a day-to-day basis, it's so easy for you to make a judgment on these kids. Kids are going to act up, and usually when they act up, there's a reason. And I think it's a lot more difficult to understand that when you don't have kids than it is when you do have kids. And that's one of the things I know I totally lacked on when I didn't have kids. And there's 2 instances of kids that if I did it again, I regret both the moves that I made, and it was because I was a coach who didn't have any kids. I could not relate in that regard.
Interesting.
And now having kids out now, I'm like, okay, trust me, there's always a reason why a kid acts up. I might not like it, but I'm going to pull that kid out to the side, and I'm going to have a talk. And the more you talk to them, they will tell you, and you will figure it out.
But now here's a conundrum I think that we face as parents. So you as a coach feel like you do a better job now that you're a parent yourself. But the flip side of that is now that you are a parent yourself and have the responsibility for supporting a family, and I know your wife shares in that responsibility as well, there can be conflict there. So, if a child needs you to travel with them to a tournament, for example, but your own family has something going on, you might not be as available now that you have kids. Before you had kids, it was easier to just pick up and go. Doesn't it make it a bit more challenging now? And, how does that play into the whole equation?
Yeah, it definitely is more challenging. You've got to find the right balance with your family and obviously the students. And I think it's a discussion that you have with your counterpart. In my case, my wife and I, when we were dating, this is a discussion that we had. I was like, listen, I'm really into the tennis thing. I really like to coach, and this is if I do well and my kids start doing well, and it involves this much travel. And she understood that from day one. So I think that's a conversation that you should have for a coach that you should have with your significant other when you start this journey. I think a lot of the issues that run in when the coach, I think the person didn't have that relationship, then they're trying to please too many parties and the job doesn't get done correctly. So, I don't find it, for me, it's not that difficult because my wife and I, we've had this agreement since day one. It's very important for me to, come up with a schedule, a timely schedule, let her know the dates so she knows and she can plan accordingly.
Right. And I will say I know Noel's wife, and she is incredibly supportive of his efforts out there, so much so that you guys constantly have kids living with you and staying with you and traveling with you. I mean, it's just, ever since I've known y'all, you've always had somebody extra living in your house that wasn't a blood relative, which I just think is so cool. And, Zena's been an incredible support, too. So I know you know how lucky you are, Noel, about that. But it's a big factor, I would think.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, and that's the other side of it, where you'd say, I'm looking for a coach that doesn't have that type of stuff. I mean, look, there's both sides of it. I'm not saying, that's it. But you can work, everything can work out. I don't think anybody is unreasonable in life, I just think that from the beginning, it's important for everybody to set up, all the parties involved, to set up realistic expectations. And I think that most of the problems you see in junior tennis, competitive junior tennis, is specifically got to do with there is no realistic expectations set from the beginning. And it's like the coach, the player, and the parents have to work together as a team. So, it's like when I talk to my kids, I say, look, the kids say, look, you got 3 people usually on your team. The 3 people on your team are your parents, you, and the coach. And in that order. And I said, it was why? Because I said, look, it's very easy. Well, the coach could be in the bottom because when things are not going well, who's got the easiest task of getting out of this relationship? The coach. Why? I don't have a blood or vested interest in you that much. It's easy for me to pull the plug. Through the ups and downs, your parents are going to suffer and go through it with you. They have no choice. They're bound with you for the rest of your life. So, I think that's the biggest thing. Like the kids, I think is understanding that relationship as to how this thing works out. The parents are to me, are at the top of this pyramid. Second is the kid, and the coach is at the bottom. And I think sometimes in competitive tennis, we kind of get that order twisted wrong, where the coach is first, the kid is second, and the parents are in the low order.
Well, I was going to say, I get so frustrated when I'm on these different message boards and such where coaches are constantly griping about parents. Parents are the problem. Parents are too overbearing. Parents need to butt out. And I used to chime in and say, wait a minute. Without us, you wouldn't have these kids to work with. So you better find a way to involve us and help us understand at what level we should be participating in this process. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that many coaches face. And I know when my son was training with you, you and I had those conversations a lot. Like, who picks the tournament schedule? Whose responsibility is it to decide how many tournaments he plays and where he plays and when he ages up and all of those things. And, it was because I was coming in as an uneducated parent and really didn't understand how the process worked. So what do you feel like the coach's role should be in that kind of triangle in terms of helping the parents understand where they need to be and where they need to back off?
Yeah. I think at the top of it is, what you said, the education between the coaches and the parents. There's not enough dialogue between the parents and the coaches. And, I'm guilty of it out here. Maybe there's not enough hours in the day for this. It's like that needs, within a 1 hour lesson, they just say, I'm giving a kid a 1 hour lesson. Maybe 45 minutes to be dedicated to the kid. 15 minutes, the parents and I have that conversation and talk about the direction of the kid. That's a solution, but I don't think that happens enough anywhere. I know for sure I don't do that as much as I would like. I dare say a lot of pros don't do that. And that's kind of missing. Why they don't do that? Maybe the reason is because they feel like an hour, I need to get that hour so I can get that kid in there and get that hour. That's okay, it is important, but you're missing the other equation of, having that conversation because, there's not enough time. And when I'm done with work, usually I'm getting done at 9 o'clock. I need to get home, have a chat with my kids, see what's going on. So I'm going to put the phone down at home. I have a policy where after I get done with the court, I am not picking my phone up for my clients until the next day.
I think that's smart.
So right or wrong, I don't know. Again, there's never enough time to deal with this. But that's the thing. We need to devise a system where there's this constant dialogue between the coaches and the parents. There's not enough of this constant dialogue. It's just, usually you see it's my way is better than your way. We need to do a better job working as a team. The way I look at it now is, the parent is always going to do what's best, what they think is best for their kid. And whether us as the coaches like it or not, we have to respect that decision. And that decision comes from the fact is, we have these kids 1 hour, 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours maximum. Okay, the majority of that other time, who are they spending the majority of their time with? 2 people. If they go to school, it's the teacher and parents and the coach last. So, if you look at it that way, this is where, say what that comment that you started earlier on, about how responding to your Facebook post was understanding, that relationship, like who do the kids spend the most time with? And if you understand who these kids spend the most time with, you're going to understand who's most important in this relationship. So that's in that relationship, then let's find a way to get the best out of it. And I don't, that's that's just my intellectual way of thinking, it's like, okay, the parents help the kids because the parents obviously are the ones making a financial commitment. Usually they're the ones that introduce the kid to the sport. they're the ones who could pull the plug at any given time.
Right.
So, you know, if you look at it, I mean, for me, that's it. Just you just got to intellectual and think about, okay, that's who's important. So I need to find out, I need to have a relationship with that person who is, one, mostly responsible for the kid that I'm working with, to this person that's funding this operation. If myself and that person don't have a healthy relationship, one, it's not going to work well. Two, we're not going to be able to produce the best out of this kid.
Right, right.
So
that leads into my next question, which is this whole idea of parents pulling their children out of traditional school and either homeschooling them or having them do virtual school. And when my son was training with you, he came home one day and told me that he would really like to try homeschooling so that he could devote more time to his tennis. And at the time, you had a program that accomplished that. And so you and I had a conversation about it, and, you know, we kind of came to the agreement that we would kind of give it a try and see how it goes. And I told you I was going to go talk to the principal of the school and get her input, and she was in agreement that it was a great idea and we should give it a try. So we gave it a try. In hindsight, I will tell you that both my son and I regret that decision. We both feel like it was a bad decision. But that's not to say that we didn't all grow from that decision, and that's not to say that it didn't impact the kid he is now at age 17 in a positive way. So, you know, it's easy to look back and say, well, woulda, shoulda, coulda, but I do think some very positive things came out of that experience. But I know you were a real big proponent of having kids do virtual school or homeschool and add some time to their training. Do you still feel that way? Do you feel like it helps these kids become better tennis players? And why or why not?
I honestly don't feel that at all. Now, you know, when I first started teaching tennis, you know, as a young coach, I got into a very good environment. I got in a very good environment with a lot of high-quality players that were doing well. And, you know, they were pushing each other. And, you know, you get 19, you know, your first experiences, that's what you're into. That's all you know. You know, you're not thinking outside the box. You're not taking a time out and really thinking about, okay, is this the right decision for each kid? You just, you know, the program is doing well. You know, you're getting plenty of good results with, the, you know, the kids that are around you. It's very natural for you to feel that way and just want to feed any kid that comes that type of stuff. You know, in hindsight, you know, now from an intellectual person, now that when I'm thinking about it, okay, I said, okay, let's look at the kids that are playing, you know, let's look at the kids that are playing all these tournaments, you know, whether it be sectional, national tournament. What is the realistic chance, what is the percentage, realistic percentage that they go pro? Less than 1%. Okay, let's all be honest. Less than 1% goes pro, right? If that number is like that, and then realistically speaking, out of 99%, what's the realistic number you would think Lisa would go to college, have a realistic opportunity to play college tennis, Division I, Division II, Division III, NAIA, junior college? What do you think is a realistic chance that each of those kids, other 99% that are competitive, have a chance to go to college?
I would say close to 99% of them.
Exactly. So that is the thing that we need to be selling if you look at it from an intellectual point of view. And this is the thing that makes me mad now, or gets me so passionate about it. Like, well, you know, how us as tennis coaches are convincing intellectually smart doctors, you know, all this, I mean, come on, they're successful people to take their kids out of school and put them into a homeschool program that has less than a 1% chance of succeeding.
Right.
That is scary. I mean, that scares me. You know, I'm all for giving up opportunity for everyone, but you can do it. I mean, how many hours can you realistically say a kid needs to play tennis? And, you know, maximum 4. Okay, fine. Maximum 4. So you can still work around that, and the kid needs to go to school. The kid needs to be well-rounded, and that's the school part of it. I have a good example. One of my kids, he's doing well in the national scene, and he goes to regular school. There's always constant pressure from his friends. When are you going to do homeschool and all stuff? He's been struggling recently, and it's good for him. And one of his recent struggles, he went to a tournament, sectional tournament in Knoxville. Didn't have a good time. He didn't have a good result, and he came back and he said, "You know what, Coach?" The next day on his list, I said, "The part I like about school was this." I said, "Coach, I like about school is the fact that when I go to school, my friends don't care about what happened to me over the weekend. And my school friends are laughing at me like, what are you doing in Knoxville, Tennessee?" They were laughing at him, "What were you doing over the weekend in Knoxville, Tennessee?" That takes the pressure off me. He said, if I was in that environment, and let's just say I was homeschooled, I would have a bad loss, and I would show up to practice, and that's all I would hear the whole time I'm there till my next tournament. "Oh, dude, you had a bad loss to this guy. Oh, my gosh, you sucked." So how can that be good for a kid's psyche?
That's an incredibly great point. I mean, it's so true. That's not. So, you got to find, there's got to be an outlet. So that's why I feel like, there's no outlets for these kids. Forget that. And also the fact that the numbers game, 99% of these kids are going to end up in college. And it just prepare them to go to college. And, the other part of it, I say, well, intellectual point, okay, if I were to say, let me just make a decision to homeschool a kid. All right. I would say I'm not homeschooling a kid if this kid is not inside the top 100 in the country. I think that's just a guideline that you should give. This is just my guideline. Why? Because at least they've met some type of standard. And then, I'm also thinking further, okay, if a kid is homeschooling, my idea now, the way I think about it, okay, well, this kid should be homeschooling because he's shown that his level of skill right now are superior than the other one, so he has a chance to go globally with his game. And, he's going to be missing school to go with his global game and pursue this. Okay, that will make sense. But most of these kids haven't even hit this standard, so we're not even allowing these kids to have, there's no criteria as to why the kids should do it. Right.
And there's nothing, there's nothing to even push this kid. So if I said to you, well, listen, buddy, before you even think about it, maybe just try to get in the top 100 in the country. That's a goal that this kid can push towards. And there we go. There's the current state of American tennis. That's going to make the level of competition better. I mean, on these programs and all this, it's great. I mean, look, I'm going to say, a lot of tennis pros are not going to be happy with me. It's the truth. We need to face it. We're making a lot of money with these kids, but how many of those kids are doing well homeschooling? It's not. I mean, it's great for a tennis business, but is it good for the kid's psyche? Is it good for the kid's overall development as a person? I don't think so.
Right. And it's interesting. I mean, now that my son's a junior in high school, and most of his tennis friends are either his age or a year ahead of him. I mean, he's playing 18s. What we're finding is that so many of the kids who have chosen the homeschool pathway are struggling to be NCAA eligible because they haven't kept up with their work. They're not able to graduate on time, and there are very strict NCAA rules about that. And so now they not only are they not good enough to go pro, but they've jeopardized their ability to even play in college.
There you go. Yep. And that's, and that's, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, I mean, I know you've seen that with some of the kids you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So,
and that's, it's funny that was a different. I like the NCAA rules, how they've made them a lot more stringent. That the kids need to graduate on time, and with the loss of eligibility based on your clock when it ticks from when you graduate. This was a discussion that actually before I came on the show with you. One of my parents, one of the parents was the kid came for a sectional tournament this week in Clemson, and the mom was like, my son had this. This is a kid who goes to traditional school, by the way. He had a conversation on the way back with the mom and said, "Mom, I'm thinking about, maybe if I graduate, because it's an April birthday, so it's kind of, I guess, it's termed a very not a good birthday for tennis in the United States, based on the fact that most of the big tournaments are in the summer, right? So he's like, I'm thinking about what if I take a year when I graduate a year and see how it goes and play a tournament? Now, backtrack 4 to 5 years ago, you asked Noel that, I would have endorsed that. Yep, that's a great idea, but why? It's like, why is that kid feeling that way? Probably because all of the kids are making him feel that way around that. The kid has everything going for him. And I talked to the mom and said, he's very good at school. He does really well. He's an outstanding A student. He's a 4-star recruiting right now on tennis recruited. So he's doing well. There's no need for him to be thinking this way. And it was like, my solution to that is, I'm like, okay, well, to the parent, we will talk to Ross Greenstein, and Ross will help us in his way and give him the correct options. Because I just think what he does is great. It kind of takes, it adds another dimension to this, whether it being a coach and a kid and parent decision to make. Then you've got somebody who's on the outside who's a lot more objective, who's going to tell my kid, okay, this is not a good move. You need to do this.
Right.
What is the correct move? So that's I completely endorse his service because it's a lot more objective. It gets his kids on the right track. So
I will with you. He is honest beyond honest with these kids, and he does not hesitate to put them in their place in terms of their expectations, and I love that about working with him too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we're not. It's hard to. We're not setting a reasonable expectation with these kids, and I'm sure trying to be more of the solution rather than the problem. With these kids, just being honest with these kids and not selling them, like I said, not selling them pipe dreams. Okay, so just be honest. You have less than 1% chance of being a professional tennis player. Okay, you have a 99% chance of succeeding and being a great student athlete, which is going to teach you discipline and for you succeeding in life one day. Let's focus on that, and let's see how we can get the best out of it.
Right. So what caused you to change your mind, though? Because you were pushing pretty hard with you.
I sure was, but that's like I said, that's me coming into an environment where I'm a young coach in an environment where they're thriving with a homeschool program where kids are doing well. You got caught up in that. You get away from that environment and you think outside the box. I like to think myself as a very intellectual person who thinks about, okay, what is logical here? And I wasn't doing that for a while, And so and now I definitely take the time to think about, okay, what is what is practical and what is realistic.
Right.
And we make those decisions, be realistic. That's the most important thing. And a lot of these situations, not a lot of these kids are not realistic. Not a lot of parents are realistic. Not a lot of coaches are realistic.
Right.
So it's like, okay, what would make me homeschool a kid? Well, the kid would have to be top 100 in the country. And the fact that, to me, okay, you're homeschooling, is this kid homeschooling to play even better tournaments than my kids that go to regular school are playing? The answer is no. So is it really worth the kid homeschooling? Because it's not like you're homeschooling, you're playing some tournaments that I can't get into.
Right. I mean, part of the issue, and you know this because you and I have talked about it, is for a kid that's in a traditional public school. Now, private schools are a whole different animal, but public school, they don't excuse these kids for tennis. I mean, that's not excused absence. So it's a challenge, especially the kids that are going deeper in the tournaments, but even those who aren't, because a lot of times a tournament will start at 5 o'clock on a Friday, and if you have to travel, you're pulling your kid out of school early to get there. And so they're missing some class time. So it forces a situation where, my son and I joke, and I said to him, my gosh, your high school must think you have the weakest immune system on the planet, because every Friday you're going to the doctor, and every Monday you're sick. And because that's the reality we're forced into to make sure that he can keep up with his schoolwork and that the teachers allow him to make up miss tests or whatever. And it's good. And so from that perspective, homeschool or virtual school is really attractive. You know, it's
right.
You don't have to deal with all that administrative garbage. Your kid does the schoolwork and plays tennis, and there's a balance. But like you said, the biggest missing piece is then they have no escape. They have no outlet separate from their tennis.
Yep.
So it's
I mean, I hear you, Lisa, and that's, that brings me to another point that I don't seem to understand, being in this country about the schooling. Like, why can't we have the Board of Education that's in charge of the National Board of Education? Why can't we have one spring break? Why can't we have similar calendars in each of the different regions, whether it be a private school or a public school? The reason I say this is that's what's making this attraction of private schools. I'll give you homeschooling rather, and private schools. I'll give you a great example for tennis that we're talking about, is that Easter tournament that have in Mobile. The Easter tournament was in Mobile. It was on spring break. Spring break for who? Only a select few. That's the first, and it's a huge goal ball event. It literally eliminated kids that go to regular public schools because it requires them to be there on Friday to check in and meet their team. Okay, so that means they would have to miss Friday of school. Okay, and then Saturday and Sunday was training, and they played Monday through Thursday, and didn't finish it. So which school do you think is going to give your kid a whole week to do that? So again, this thing is like that's the one thing I can't understand. Why can't we, all the different sporting organizations and the Board of Education, sit down and come up with similar dates that we can have school holidays off, and those are the times that we need to be having the significant tournaments, so that we give everybody an equal opportunity. Because, yes, the opportunity is not equal right now because the way the opportunity is, it is eliminating non-homeschooled kids.
Right.
This is how it is because...
Well, and even our governing body, I mean, I've had this conversation with them. I'll give you another example of something similar. The ITA Coaches Showcase, the college showcase that was held in December in conjunction with the ITA Coaches Convention. The showcase where the kids come and spend a day playing matches in front of the college coaches was held the Friday before final exam week for most kids across the country, because it was the week before Christmas. And so I said to the people organizing the event, did y'all think about that when you chose the date? Why couldn't the showcase be on Saturday or Sunday? I know it has to be in conjunction with the coaches convention. Why does it have to be on Friday and require these kids, most likely college-bound, high school-age kids, because they're there to play in front of college coaches, so obviously that's what's on their agenda, is to go to college, to require them to miss school the Friday before their final exams. Makes no sense.
I am totally with you now. I mean, I agree with you, and this is what I'm saying. You mean to tell me, as great as this country is, the national bodies of the different sports, together in conjunction with the Board of Education, cannot come up with dates, with a calendar that says, okay, this is the calendar for schools, this is the calendar for the holidays. That way, I'm sure, that we can come. That's the one thing that's really outstanding, that's surprising to me, that, we have not been able to come up with that. It's shocking that we cannot come up with that. It's very simple. It is not hard. I don't think that you're going to have, maybe I'm in the minority, but I don't think you're going to have too many people object to that, because one, you're going to keep the kids in school, which one is going to increase, hopefully I think it's going to increase the level of education that these kids have, I think. And then two, you'll get more of the kids participating in the important tournaments, which makes the field stronger, which in turn is going to help the game and the level of competition, and there you go. There's your American champions.
Right. That makes so much sense to me. I don't know. I guess maybe that's a project that we all need to take on, is start writing letters to our National Board of Education. But you're right. That's such a simple solution.
So, it is. It's I don't know. But I just would like to say, most people, all of us as individuals, emotion is a big part of sports. And I just think that once we get past beyond the emotional part of it and we've had time to, calm down and cool off, let's go from a very, very, logical, intellectual. Let's just think about some of the things that we're doing and saying about our kids and in terms of what we're taking this game. Because I think a lot of it has to do with it's heavily weighted on too much emotion. Right.
Well, so that's the perfect segue into talking about the state of American tennis. And I know that, we both have heard time and again, and anybody that's ever read anything I've written has heard this too, that, the problem with American tennis is our kids are lazy, they don't want to work hard, they aren't in need of anything, so they don't understand what it's like to fight. And so they're the problem. And an extension of that would be that it's the parents' fault for making life too easy for these kids. You have a different perspective on that. Will you share that with us?
Yeah, I have a different perspective because, one, let's say who's teaching, the majority of the people teaching the American kids, let's be honest. Are they American nationalized citizens or are they Americans to begin with? I would say that a lot of them are American nationalized people, right?
Yes.
So this is my first. This is what I would say. I don't have the stats on it, but this will be my bet on it. That most of them are American nationalized people. So we bring different values and belief systems and hard work. All these things that they're saying are not there. Maybe we're the problem. What are we doing What are we doing that's not bringing that type of mentality to these kids? We're not doing, and to me, we're not doing a good job in terms of relating to these kids, how we want them to work based on their environment, not based on our environment. Have our values based on this kids' environment and what they have. And I think that's the disconnect.
And so, you look back at American tennis, and I can't go back that far, I just don't have the knowledge, but you look at the Everett family, for example, or the McEnroe family, or Jimmy Connors, or Andre Agassi. These aren't kids, or Pete Sampras, these aren't kids that were from poor families, war-torn areas. These kids grew up in at worst, middle-class environment, at worst.
Right.
So how did they ascend to the top of the game, and why do we now think we have to do something different to make our kids ascend to the top of the game?
Yeah, if my answer to that question, first of all, that's a good observation. They came from pre-middle class, families, and that's a big one where these kids are spoiled, and that's the statement out there, right? Kids are spoiled. They don't know the value. I think it's, from a coaching point of view, I think we could do a better job as the coaches. I think also the parents could do a better job on that one. I'll start with the parents, just from my own, having to parent my 3-year-old and my 2-year-old. I have to catch myself sometimes. It's easy not to parent them and make them happy. It's very easy. Case in point, and my daughter, she knows very well, the 3-year-old, she knows very well she cannot have candy in the morning, right? But
right.
She has picked out between the two of us who the softie is, who the disciplinarian is in the house. It so happens that the disciplinarian in the house who sets out the gauntlet is my wife. That is softie. She knows this. So she will come, and then she will say, hey, Daddy, I need to tell you this. I need to tell you a secret. Here you go. You can have one. Just don't tell Mommy. And then, there I have a decision to make. Do I make her happy so then I don't have to really parent her? I don't have to parent her. If she eats it, then she'll be quiet for the next 2 hours. That's fine. I can be, I'll be okay. Or I tell her, no. So you cannot have this because it's a snack. Allowed to have it once a day, and it's usually during these hours, just like the rules are. So that's, I think it's from the parent, it's just the inconsistencies of having, it's very easy to parent and make the hard decisions and sometimes be the friend of the kid. That's the part where, from my coaching perspective, that I see a lot of it is, parents will choose the easy route. Or
right.
Sometimes you have to parent your kid, and it might hurt. It might hurt you to see them suffer. But you know what? They will learn respect, and they're going to hopefully improve moving forward. And it's from that when there's that foundation that us as the coaches should also be able to reinforce that. So I don't think there's that conversation that's going on where, I don't know, you tell me, Lisa, in your experience, where you walk in there with the coach and you have a conversation, you bring your kids there, and the conversation with the coach goes like this. Okay, well, tell me, what are some of the issues that you have with your kids when it comes to schoolwork and homework and this type of stuff? Okay, how do you handle this situation with him? I think that's important for me, being able to bring out the best in a kid on the tennis court. I think that's also important to know. Okay, when he's in a stressful environment, how does he handle it? I don't think these conversations are going on.
I don't think so either.
So then you have the coach trying to, the coach trying to go that route, his way, which he thinks is significant, and the parents trying to go, and you're both constantly trying to, pull, tug. The kid is going to pull to whoever is the easy one.
Sure.
That's who the kid is going to pull to. So, these are, that's the teamwork. There's not enough teamwork going on with parents and the coaches. We're not talking enough. And again, we need to figure out. I surely haven't found what the solution is, but I know for a fact I'm in a small little program with my 30 kids that play tennis. I feel like I'm not even having enough conversations with the parents to get to know their kids better, because it's important for me to know their kids, for me to be able to figure out what makes them tick, what doesn't. So I can imagine when you're in a 250 to 500 size program, surely that's definitely not going on. So really, the kid that does well but can't.
What can coaches do to change that? Or what can parents do? Where does it start? Does it start with you, the coach, or does it start with me, the parent?
I want to say both. I want to say initially, the coach sees it. The coach should be able to talk to the parents and start that dialogue. Or if the parent does nothing, no dialogue is coming from the coach, the parents should go and talk to the coach. There should be more concerted effort from both parties. I don't think there's enough of that effort in both parties to talk about, spending enough time, with each other's kids. We're just talking about each specific kids. So, that's one thing that for my firm, I try to have that. Luckily, it's small enough, so for the most part, it's like, we're talking about this weekend, the sectional, we only had 5 kids playing the sectional tournament. So, Monday mornings is usually I have conversations with the parents and we talk about, what happened. That's great. We all usually, we're on the same page of what we're moving forward. That's one way I deal with, in my program. Every, Monday come from the tournament, wherever the kids will have a discussion with the parents and see what they saw, what room for improvements, what they didn't like, what come up with different solutions. So, to answer your question, who should initiate it? First, I think the parents should try to initiate. When you bring a kid to a program, you should try to initiate. Have a conversation with the coach. It goes back to your question: what makes a good coach? Because if 6 months from down the road, you have not had a conversation with a coach or anybody in that program who's dealing with your kids, is that the right fit for your kid?
Right. Well, and at what point do you make that decision as a parent? Like, how long do you wait? I mean, it's tough because meanwhile you're spending money. You're, as a family, you're, time, the clock is ticking. I mean, the child's continually getting older. And so how long do you give a coach or a program before you say, you know what, this is not what we want?
My one, I call it the 6-month rule. Why I go 6 months, reading Malcolm Gladwell's book, about the whole thing, the 60 days becomes a habit type of stuff. Based on that, I come up with, you're not going to really see is 60 consecutive days. You're not going to see a kid for 60 consecutive days. So, so I say, well, when a kid comes in, I have a conversation with parents, like, this is what I expect from the kid. Let's meet 6 months down the road. 6 months down the road, we should have hit this target. And you also come and tell me what you've seen as well in 6 months. And I'll say, that's my time frame. 6 months, I think it's plenty of time to see the improvements or non-improvements. And then you make a decision. And then when those 6 months are up, we set a new time on another 6 months. Mm-hmm. So that is my, that's because I think it's long enough where the player gets to learn about the coach gets to learn about the player, and also the coach and the parents should have some type of relationship in those 6 months.
Right. Well, so let me ask you this question then. The quote I read off at the beginning of the show about selling pipe dreams to families.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What, as parents and as, uneducated consumers of this game, because let's face it, most of the parents come at this really not understanding how it all works. How do we go to a coach and have that coach say to us, give me 3 years with your kid, pay me $1,000 a month for 3 years, and I'm going to guarantee that kid's going to get a full ride to a D1 program, or I'm going to guarantee that kid's winning challengers and futures events, by the time they're 18 years old. How do we know whether they're pulling our leg or, hey, my kid's really got something special here?
Yeah, and Lisa, this is what you just described. That question is exactly what, for me, I felt that's one of the things I think I've evolved in it. That's, first of all, any coach that, in my opinion, that comes and tells you, any parent, hey, your kid, it can specifically tell you a timeline as to what your kid is going to accomplish, like in terms of, bullfrog or, national. That I'm sorry, they're lying. They're selling you a pipe dream. Nobody knows, because you cannot control a lot of things. One, you cannot control the effort of the kid. You cannot control that. You cannot control how much a kid tries. You cannot control how much effort is being put in by the coach. The only thing that a coach should be able to promise to a parent when they walk in those doors in their program is to say, you know what, I've seen your kid. I think your kid has a lot of good qualities in them. Okay, this is what I am trying to, accomplish with your kids in terms of specific skill-wise, whether it be, technique, whether it be, tactical, that type of stuff, those are real tangible attitudes. These are tangible things that you can see and measure, but you cannot see and you cannot measure. Nobody can measure that and say, well, this kid, a great example is, a kid that wins in the 12s, 14s, 16s, 18s, and just dominates. All the way to the 18s, how many of them have done that and still gone on to being top 10 players in the world? Less than 1%. So, us as coaches, we need to stop selling that. Nobody knows. If a coach is telling you that when you bring your kid, I would be wary of that, and I would be questioning that. He's selling me a pipe dream. He doesn't know. All he should be able to tell me is how much effort he's going to put in with my kid, what the effort he requires from my kid, the dialogue that we have. This is going to motivate me. Mm-hmm. And if that parent if that coach is holding on to their word and we're having these discussions all the time, that's going to motivate me to keep bringing my kid to that person.
Right. Right.
But but there's a lot of things that are said to bring the people into a program. It's once you in the program, are we doing a good job to maintain and keep that kid there? Forget keeping that kid there, developing the kid, because at the end of the day, it's about bringing the best out of the kid. When your kid lives the program, you should be able to, from a coaching, my perspective is, I should be able to say, you know what, I gave the best I could with that kid, and that kid fulfilled their potential, whatever it might be.
Right.
Maximize their skill set, maximize their talent. I think that's the gift that a coach should be able to give to any kid or any parent, and tell them, you know what, I'm going to help your kid try to maximize their talent. But I cannot tell you, give you he's going to win a national, if he does this. No. That's right there to me, it should be a red flag. Right. Nobody knows. There's too many variables that, could affect that.
But so what needs to happen in the coaching community to make all coaches come at it that way? Because, there's no accountability. The certifying organizations, basically will certify anybody that pays the fee and passes the test. So what can we do to help facilitate a change in the mindset of the junior coaches out there?
Yeah, that is a big question. It is, tennis teaching is a profession, and we need, like any other profession, we need to be getting constantly educated at it. And the governing body, may be the USTA, USPTA, USPTR, they need to, I don't know what to say, need to come up with certain criteria, requirements, continuing, which they do, but hold them more stringent. You're right. I can go, next weekend and over the weekend become a certified teaching pro. Does that mean that I know how to actually really teach and develop a kid? And the answer, is usually no. So yeah, there's got to be a better way of, like I said, tennis. We've got to be looking at it more from. It's gone beyond. It's not a hobby anymore. It is more of a profession. That it should be professional, and we should be getting properly educated. We should be getting properly, continuing education, and people need to see that. And
are those messages heard in that presentation at the Easter Bowl?
In the presentation at the Easter Bowl, I don't think we talked about that much. But one thing I would say that I in the current state that I'm a little encouraged about. Being trying to have some high performance kids. Is, with Kent Kinnear being in charge of the player development, what they're trying to create is more of an inclusive environment with the USTA and the private sector. Because before, there was no inclusion at all. You go to tournaments, especially the big ones, you hear the kids, oh, that's a USTA kid. We need to whip up on the USTA kid. And that was the thing, because traditionally, that was, the aura out there was the USTA picked whoever they wanted, and if I was not a USTA kid, they didn't care about you, but which made a lot of kids play. Their one motivation only, to take out a USTA kid. Where I feel now they're doing a better job of inclusion with the private sector, working in hand. It's doing, I will say that. That's the one, I like the direction where the current, national player development people like the Kent Kinnear are trying to be more inclusive with the private coaches and getting feedback from them. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, I think it's looking bright from that perspective, and it's a little bit more transparent as to what's going on.
Right, but there wasn't much discussion in terms of making the private
education.
Sector. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there wasn't that discussion wasn't there about that at all. But that's a discussion that needs to be had, about what even we've got the USPTA and USPTR. This is great. They both, but that's, to me again, that's between the USTA, USPTA, and USPTR. Come on, we should be able to come up with one body that directs and controls the whole thing, because it's tennis, really.
Right. Yeah, I agree with you.
Somebody needs to be in charge of this profession. One person.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
Set up the standard.
I agree. Well, we're coming to the end of our hour, and I just I want to say thank you to you for taking time out to share your experience and your thoughts with us, and for giving such an honest perspective on your development and change of heart as a coach. And I know the kids you work with and have the utmost regard for you and your abilities. So thanks for being with us. To my listeners, thanks for tuning in, and have a great week, everybody.
All right, thanks, Lisa.